Hello there, Math 126 fans. Gonna continue my little series on test prep ideas. These are all problems I've taken directly from old midterm exams that focus on just a few topics. Now, this is something I advise students to always do, which is to each week open up the exam archive for 3 minutes, 2 minutes, whatever time you have between for class, and say, could I start this? This is directly from an old exam. This also fits in neatly with one of the homework questions you're doing, and it's a translation question. So let's read it. Find the center and radius of the sphere with these points that we're trying to describe, such that the distance from P to A, and just for something to write down, I'm going to write this, is triple the distance from P to B. So it's equal to 3 times the distance from P to B. And this is in that first homework set. It's all about translating. It's surprising that that should be a sphere at all, but we can write down and see what happens. So we get the square root, and I'll show some visuals in a second. Square root of x minus 0 squared, because that's this point, plus y squared plus z minus 2 squared equals 3 times the square root. Now we're going to need to go to the distance to this point. The rest of the problem is an algebra question, so let's just run through that really quickly. We're going to square both sides. I'm going to expand this as well, since I see that I'm going to have to do some simplifying. If we don't know how to expand that, it's that monkey face thing we've talked about in class, or FOIL as most students call it. Then algebra takes a little bit of game planning. I mean, our goal is to try to make this look like a circle. So we're going to get all the x's to the same side, the x's, the y's, the z's, all the constants to the other side. So you don't want to just blindly move forward. But in my mind, I'm going to multiply this 9 through. I'm going to leave the 4 on this side. This is tamer than the homework question. I think I'll do another one right after this because I don't mind doing these. And if, honestly, it's worth our time if you feel like you can't handle, a lot of algebra hitting you, especially with fractions, then I want to help you build some comfort with that. The thing we notice that happens is we get 8x squared plus 8y squared plus 8z squared plus 4z. And so our next step is, because, there's more than one way to do this, but when I'm completing the square, I like to think back to what a perfect square looks like. I always just run an example. So here's a quick example. This is z squared minus 6z plus 9. And then completing the square, you're trying to figure out what these numbers are based off of this number. So it's half the middle squared. But in order to use that, you need a 1 in front of the first term. So I'm going to divide everything by 8. That's 4 eighths, which is 1 half. Plus 1 half z. And then we're there. Half the middle is a fourth. I think part of the issue people have is just an uneasiness with fractions. And then we're going to do a fourth squared. And we're going to add that to both sides. We're trying to change the look of it. Oops, I'm getting a little off the screen. Let's do a little adjusting here. Yay, okay. That's it. And at that point, we're done. This is going to be z plus a fourth. Notice that's half the middle squared. And then we have y squared. We have x squared. And the radius will be the square root of whatever this is, which is going to be 1/16 plus a half. And if I want to get a common denominator, that's 8/16. So altogether, it's 9/16. And that was it. So it was a sphere centered at 0, 0, a fourth. with radius 3/4. It's the square root of that. So it is surprising that this happens, but it turns out it doesn't matter if it's double, triple, or squared. You get this interesting behavior. And I actually already showed this as a hint for a homework problem. Oh, it's going way too fast. And then I also played around. I looked at a whole bunch of different examples of points that are on this. It does lead to this sphere. Make it so you can see it through that. So those points I had bouncing around were all on this sphere. Kind of surprising. Now, this is not the picture for the problem we're doing, but it's this fact. So maybe I'll just step through what. So my point of doing this was to. This is less of an exam prep question and more of an algebra question. Most of my questions I ask in these test preps will be getting you ready for exams. This is more getting you ready for an important homework question and simplifying things a little bit. The homework question looks like this. There's a 2 there. And in my version of the homework, this point is, so I'm going to change these and show you my homework question. My homework question has a -2, 5, 2. And the second point is 6, 3, -1. I'll zoom out a little bit, sorry. So how do things change? Well, let's do it. It's still going to be the exact same approach. It's just going to take a little more care because the numbers aren't nice. And my hope is students can get to a point where they're not completely overwhelmed by a sequence of algebra and arithmetic. A little side hope of mine. So this with the square root is equal to 2 times the other with the square root. Now, part of why I had you do a simpler example first is you kind of can see your way through the solution. It's always a good strategy is to do some of the simplest examples you can do if you're going to do a hard problem. Okay, so now we're going to square both sides, and let's expand while we're at it. And honestly, we're very close to finding the centers. I'll show you why in a second. So we're going to get x squared plus 4x plus 4. So yeah, if you're still foiling and drawing a square to do that, this is where that starts to hurt you. So this is what you would learn in doing this problem of, okay, now it is time for me to know. Double the middle, square it. Double the middle, square it. And that's pretty dang big. In fact, the moment I see that, I start to think about how can I organize my work? Because it's going to be a huge mess. But let's try to go one step further. So 4. And then I'm going to have a huge expanded thing here. Minus 12x. This looks bad, but I just need to get all the numbers together. You can split it up. I mean, I've seen students do all sorts of clever things to organize their work. This isn't a regular thing we're doing. This is a challenge problem for this week. But it's a good exercise in practicing being organized. The exact same things are going to happen. We're going to get all the x's, y's, and z's together, complete the square, and that will tell us the center, and then we'll clean it up on the other side. So with that in mind, I have a game plan. Let's collect all these constants and put them on one side. Probably one of the biggest challenges is what's about to happen. This often happens in problems like this, where the expanding everything out is the hardest part, and so you want to do that in a very organized way. So let's see what happens. And I could have made a mistake here. I'm just talking through how to think about it. Okay? I can talk about checking, but this video is already getting too long. So 33 is what I got. 4 plus 25 plus 4. So that's that constant. The constant on the other side is going to be 4 times 36, 4 times 39, 4 times 1. So that might want a calculator for 4 times 36. Let's just do it like this. Plus 9, plus 1. There's all the constants. Everything else will be a variable. In fact, I feel like now I should do this. And I feel like now I should call this 10 and I should call that 46. And I have noticed that sometimes because people are so reluctant to simplify, it makes their life harder. So a little bit of simplifying here or there. So I've taken care of all the constants in the problem, including that and that and that, and moved it over. So now I'm just down to variables. So I'm going to have a 4x squared. And honestly, at this point, I would see that I'm going to get a 4x squared minus an x squared. So I'm going to get a 3x squared. And then I'm going to have a 4. And I'm just trying to clean up. So now let's look at the x. I'm going to look at the x. So I'm going to have a minus 48x. That comes from distributing that 4. And I have a minus 4x. Ooh, we're getting close. Same thing. I'm going to have a 3y squared. I have a minus 24y, y 24 because I distributed the 4. So it is a lot, but we're just taking it in pieces and just sweeping through left to right. We don't have to be overwhelmed. We can take it calmly. Then I have a 3z squared. Again, that's a 4z squared, but then I'm going to subtract this z squared. And then I have an 8z, 4 times 2z. And then I'm going to add a 4z. So that was it. We really had to stay calm, but then we had it. Why do I say we have it? At this point, what can we do? And I probably would. This is about where I would be like, okay, I have a long problem. Let's not keep that number like that. So negative 151 for me equals 3x squared minus 52x plus 3y squared minus 14y plus z squared. And this is probably the biggest algebra problem of the term. I told students that. I warned you about it. But now we're here. We're going to divide everything by 3, so we can use like completing the square, maneuvering, divide by 3, divide by 3. This one comes out nice. It's just 4. This is over 3. This is over 3. At this moment, we actually know the centers. Because what are we going to do? Half the middle squared, half the middle squared, half the middle squared, and add that to both sides. But half the middle is the factor. I have noticed a small thing that sort of bugs me a little bit, which is if you're doing half of 52 over 3, you should not write a 6 on the bottom. You should write a 26 over 3. I'd much rather cancel and make the number smaller. Okay, 26 over 3 squared plus y minus 7 over 3 squared plus z plus 2 squared. So if I was doing this problem, I would say, okay, I already know the center. In fact, the homework even allows you to just enter the center. I don't really like people checking their work that way, but that would confirm you had the center right. Okay, so that's how I got this over here. Let's double check. I haven't actually double checked my work. 26 thirds, yes. That's how I got that purple sphere and drew it. Negative. Okay, yep, that matches up. Then I got the radius by figuring out what these numbers are. But I know what they are. They're half the middle squared. I would add that to both sides. So this is going to be 26 thirds squared. This is going to be 7 thirds squared. And then 4. Those things need to be added. That's the square of the radius, so the square root of that is my radius. So that's mostly about organizing and being calm in how you would do such a thing. Okay, I think I'll stop that and do the second part of the test prep separately.